Hey guys, Scarlet Spidey here. Welcome to my first video. Sorry if I stutter a bit. I'm a bit nervous and this is not scripted. So, yeah. Um, this video did take me a while to make and my back hurts from drawing these, so yeah, I had a lot of fun. But let's get into it. Alright, first up we got Miles. How I think they would make him a healer is I think they could infuse his venom with Carnovium similar how they did it with Rogue. For his passives, I think he should have the same as Peter, the spider sense and the wall crawling. It makes sense. He'd also have the double jump, but for his swings, I think he'd have two, so he isn't as mobile as Peter, so it'd be a bit easier to kill him. For his first ability, which I call Venom Rush, he can use it to dash to his teammates and heal them, but he can also use it to dash to enemies and zap them, which applies a new effect I call Paralysis, which kind of works like Wanda's bubble thing, where it makes the enemies kind of lag. Next, I have Venom Smash, which works like the Insomniac Venom Smash, but it heals teammates and damages enemies, but also pushing them back. I think the pushback would be around the same strength as Invisible Woman's push thing. His next ability, which is my favorite, is called Spider Reflexes. You can activate it for 5 seconds and dodge all incoming damage. It looks similar to how, if you've played Shattered Dimensions or Edge of Time and you could hold down the trigger and enter like a dodge state, I think that's how it would look. For his final ability, I have Saving Thread, which you shoot a venom-infused web that pulls enemies, kind of like how Peter's pool grabs enemies, but it heals teammates. For his attacks, I have Venom Jab, which would be kind of like a 1, 2, 3 hit thing, and then on the third hit, it would apply the paralysis effect. His Venom Web Spray, which is kind of self-explanatory, would heal teammates, but also damage enemies. I think it'd work a bit like Moira's healing spray if you played Overwatch. For his ult Venom Blast, he explodes, covering a large area, healing and enhancing his teammates, while damaging and disabling a enemy's ability for a couple seconds. Design-wise, I wanted to make him match Peter a little bit, so I made his symbol and eyes look pretty much the same. I just changed the shape a little bit. The spider has more of like lightning motifs. The legs are a bit more jagged. I also took inspiration from his Spider-Verse look and a bit of his Insomniac look. I made the like red sections on his shoulders that connect with the chest part kind of short, like the Into the Spider-Verse look. I also gave him like the red armor plating things on the arms that kind of look like Peter's suit from Spider-Man 2. This one took me the longest to make because the symbol was very complicated and it took me a while to get the shape right. Um, I did try to replicate the shading a bit too on my drawings, but I don't think they look that good. But you guys can let me know in the comments. I am going to be going in order from healer to tank. So next up is our duelist, which is. Alright, next up in our duelist role is the Spot. For his passive, I call it Spot World Retreat. It works a bit like Adam's Revive thing, but instead of when he dies, it activates when he's around like 50 HP, and he can teleport to whatever spot he selected before he reached 50 HP. It does have a 120-second cooldown, so he can't be immortal and just not die. Now onto his abilities, I have Recycled Volley, where he can absorb incoming fire and send it back. It would come back a bit spread out though, so you can't just like headshot a bunch of people and get like 3 kills at once. For his next ability, which I'm calling Bagel, you can select a player with like a wheel, kind of like Black Cat's ability thing, and you can hit a player and it does like 50 damage. This would have like a 60-second cooldown because it'd be kind of overpowered to finish somebody off if they run away. Next, we have Miss the Spot, which is kind of like a trap. You can place it on the ground, and if an enemy walks over it, they get pulled in and they're stuck there for a few seconds, kind of like Elsa's trap thing. Lastly, we got Spot the Spot, which is basically a portal that you can pick where you want to teleport to, and you can teleport there. It would have a pretty short range, though, so you wouldn't be able to go like across the map. For his attacks, I have Spot Punch, which would have a lock-on mechanic similar to daggers, and you could punch someone through a spot. He would also have Spot Charges, so he can't spam his abilities, because then he'd be pretty overpowered. For his ult, I'm calling it Gravity Well, and you can create a spot that pulls in enemies, and if they get into the center of it, they get killed, basically. The strength of it depends on how close you are to the center of it. If you're farther out, you can easily walk out of it, but if you're closer to the center, you more likely will die. Design-wise, I didn't want him to look just like basic Spot, no clothes and stuff, so I gave him like a poncho, which I think looks pretty cool. It took me a while to decide what color I wanted to make it. I was originally going to do it like a whitish color, but then it would blend in with his skin. So I made it like gray, and I think it turned out pretty cool. It reminds me of whatever his name was from Poppy Playtime, like the TV head looking dude with like the cloak and stuff. I think that's what he looks like, kind of. All right, so now that we're done with the spot, which is our duelist, now we're on to our final role, which is. All right, last up in our tank role is Miguel O'Hara or Spider-Man 2099. For his passives, I have a healing factor, which would be a healing over time thing, but it'd probably have a cooldown similar to Wolverine's healing factor thing. And since he doesn't have a spider sense, he has his enhanced vision, which he can sense an enemy through a wall, kind of like Daredevil's thing, but it can only detect one enemy, and it has a very small range. For his abilities, he'd have a glide, which would work like Moon Knight's glide. He'd also have one charge for his laser web swing, so he wouldn't be able to be as mobile as Spider-Man since he's a tank. For his first actual ability, I call it Spider's Grasp, which he can grab an enemy with the option to either throw them or lift them up in the air and slam them down, kind of like the Spider-Verse slam thing on the bullet train. I think it would be cool if they made one of his achievements slamming Miles with that ability to reference the movie. For his next ability, I'm calling it Laser Web Barrier / Snare. You can either connect two laser web nodes, and you can make like a barrier that blocks incoming damage, but when enemies walk through, it does like a tase type damage thing and slows them a bit. The other option for that ability, you could place a snare on the ground, which would work kind of like the bubble thing he used in Across the Spider-Verse to trap Miles. Then for his last ability, he have a bite, which would work kind of like Rogue's drain ability, but you gain health and paralyze them for a few seconds. For his attacks, he'd have Talon swipes, which would work kind of like Black Panther's things, probably a bit slower though. He'd also have a secondary attack, which would work like the Thing's punch thing, where you can charge up your like arm blade things and you can slash someone. Then for his ult, I call Time Paradox. It worked kind of like his, I forget if it was like an ultimate ability in Edge of Time, but you could like make a big bubble, which would like freeze enemies. But instead of freezing enemies in the game, it'd like make them slow. It would also give some overshield to teammates inside the bubble when it's activated. And then while Miguel's inside, he can have like these whirlwind attack things where he just like spins around, kind of like Blade, but probably not as fast and strong. For his design, I kind of made like a mix of his Across the Spider-Verse suit and his Edge of Time suit with like the glowing blue sections. I also added leg blades too because I thought it looked pretty cool. I think this is my favorite I did out of all three designs, and I think I did my best replication of Rival's shading on this one too. All right, now we're going to talk about team ups, which I gave team ups to pretty much all of them. For our first team up, we have Spider Pals, which is Peter and Miles, where Miles is the anchor. When this team up is activated, Peter's web shooters are infused with Miles' venom. It would work kind of like Human Torch's team up with him, where if he hit them with the fire web thing and he did an uppercut web pool on them, it would activate and do like the flame take damage thing. But instead of that, it would apply the paralysis effect on enemies. The next team up I'm calling Future Spiders, which has Penny, Black Widow, and Miguel, which he's the anchor. When this team up is activated, Penny's spider nest raises a protective web barrier around it with like 400 HP, so it can heal and protect teammates. Black Widow would gain a gun shield with around like 150, 200 HP, so she's not too overpowered. And then the final team up I'm calling Spotted, Light, and Dark Force, which would include Cloak and Dagger and the Spot, which he's the anchor. The Spot shares a spot with both Cloak and Dagger. Dagger gains a spot which can absorb damage, and it can be shot back as a volley of healing and damaging daggers. Cloak can open a spot that works kind of like Black Cat's portal thing, but when teammates pass through, they get the shroud effect and become invisible. And then when enemies pass through, they get the blind effect. Well, that's the end of the video I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like or hitting that hype button. And if you have any ideas on how you think these characters would work in game, please be sure to comment. Again, I had a lot of fun making this video, so if this video does do well, maybe I'll make a part 2 with other Spider-Man characters. But until then, I guess, bye.